A millionaire wed his maid on a dare. What he learned that night changed everything. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. It all began on a rainy Friday evening in Manhattan, inside the golden lights of a private lounge. Laughter echoed between glasses of expensive champagne. Ethan Ward leaned back in his chair, his tailored suit untouched by the chaos of the world. At only 31, he was the youngest tech millionaire in the city. Sharp, confident, and famously heartless when it came to love. "Come on, Ethan," one of his friends jeered. Swirling his drink, "You claim you can buy anything. How about marriage? I dare you to marry the new maid at your estate. What is her name?" "Lila." The table burst into laughter. Ethan smirked, the kind of smile that hid boredom behind charm. "You think I would marry a maid just for fun?" he asked, his voice smooth. "That is the point." Another friend said, "Prove you are fearless. You talk about risk in business. How about one in life?" Ethan's eyes narrowed for a second. He hated losing, even in a game that meant nothing. Slowly, he set his glass down. "Fine. If you want a show, you will get one." That same night, back at his glass-walled penthouse overlooking the city, Ethan found Lila wiping the marble floor near the fireplace. She was in her mid-20s, modest, her hands rough from long hours of cleaning. She looked up, startled as he stepped closer. "Mr. Ward, I did not know you were home," she said quickly, lowering her gaze. He studied her for a long moment, then said something that made her freeze. "How would you like to be my wife?" Lila blinked. "I am sorry. What did you say?" "Marry me," he repeated calmly. "It is nothing serious. A simple arrangement. You will get $100,000 in return, enough to pay for whatever you need." Her heart pounded in disbelief. "Why me?" "Because you are the first person who looked me in the eye today," he replied. "And because I can." The words cut like ice. For Ethan, it was only a dare, a joke born of pride. But for Lila, it was desperation wrapped in humiliation. Her younger brother was in the hospital, and the bills had already passed what she could ever earn. She clenched her fists, forcing herself to stand tall. "If that is what you want, Mr. Ward, then I accept." Ethan tilted his head, surprised by her composure. "Good. Tomorrow, my lawyer will bring the papers. It will be quick." As she walked away, the reflection of the city lights shimmered on the floor between them, two worlds about to collide for all the wrong reasons. He thought it was just a dare. She thought it was her only chance. Neither of them knew that one reckless decision that night would change their lives forever. The next morning, rain still lingered over the city like a gray curtain. Ethan Ward sat in his office, staring out at the skyline that glittered through the mist. His lawyer, Mr. Collins, entered quietly with a folder in hand. "The marriage contract. Intubect. Sir," he said, placing it on the desk. "Simple terms. No emotional obligations. No financial entanglements beyond the agreed payment. It will protect your assets." Ethan flipped through the pages without expression. "Good. Deliver it to her. I want this done by the end of the week." He said it casually, like another business deal. To him, emotions were liabilities, and people were numbers on a balance sheet. Across town, Lila stood in a small hospital corridor, holding a paper cup of cold coffee. Her younger brother, Jamie, only 17, lay in a narrow bed behind the glass wall, his chest rising weakly beneath the oxygen tubes. The doctor's words echoed in her head, "The surgery will not wait." She looked down at her phone. No new messages. Just an unread text from Mr. Collins asking to meet. When she arrived at Ethan's penthouse later that day, the marble floors gleamed under the afternoon light. Ethan was there, sitting on the edge of the piano bench, scrolling through his phone. Without looking up, he said, "You can read the contract. If you agree, sign at the bottom." Lila took a deep breath, scanning the clauses. The payment was enough to cover Jamie's operation and a year of recovery. Still, Her hand trembled slightly when she reached for the pen. Ethan finally looked at her. Second thoughts. She shook her head. No, I just never imagined signing a marriage like this. He shrugged. Neither did I. But sometimes, a little risk makes life interesting. Her signature dried slowly on the page, and with that single act, her life shifted direction. Ethan's world was polished steel and cold marble. Hers was made of worn shoes and second-hand coats. Yet now they were bound by law. Two strangers standing at opposite ends of the same sentence. 2 days later, in a quiet courthouse, they exchanged vows under the indifferent eyes of a clerk and a notary. No flowers. No music. Only the sound of rain tapping against the tall windows. "Do you, Ethan Ward, take Lila Hart to be your lawful wife?" "I do," he said, his tone measured, almost detached. "And do you, Lila Hart, take Ethan Ward to be your lawful husband?" She hesitated for half a breath before answering. "I do." The clerk signed the papers and offered a perfunctory smile. "Congratulations. You are now married." Ethan slipped a ring onto her finger. A simple gold band that felt heavier than she expected. Outside, a limousine waited to take them to the mansion that was now, at least on paper, her home. As the car moved through the rain-soaked streets, Lila gazed out the window in silence. The city blurred into streaks of silver and gray. Ethan sat beside her, checking his phone, as if this moment meant nothing. But she felt the weight of it, the surreal truth that she had just become Mrs. Ward, somewhere between duty and pride. A quiet voice inside whispered that this was not the end of her story. It was only the beginning of a bet that neither of them truly understood yet. That evening, the iron gates of Ethan Ward's estate opened with a slow metallic groan. The limousine rolled up the long driveway, its tires whispering against the wet cobblestones. When Lila stepped out, she stood frozen for a moment, beneath the mansion's towering facade white stone. Endless windows, and an entrance that looked more like a museum than a home. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lavender and polished wood. A housekeeper greeted her politely, leading her through a grand foyer where a crystal chandelier shimmered like captured rain. Ethan followed behind, his footsteps calm and even. "Welcome, Mrs. Ward," he said, his voice neutral, almost distant. "You will have your own room at the East Wing. Dinner is at 7. My assistant will help you with the schedule." She turned to face him. "So that is it. We sign. We move in. And now we pretend." Ethan slipped his hands into his pockets. "Pretend. No. We follow the terms of our agreement. The public expects a marriage. We will give them one." He nodded to the housekeeper and walked away, leaving her alone in the grand hallway. Lila stared after him, her chest tight. She had thought she was ready for this. But the silence inside the mansion felt heavy, almost alive. Her room was beautiful, too beautiful. Cream-colored walls, a king-sized bed, tall curtains drawn over the windows. On the vanity, a bouquet of white roses waited in a crystal vase. A small note was tucked beneath it. "Dinner, 7 sharp." At the table that night, the two of them sat at opposite ends of a dining room large enough for 20 guests. The silverware gleamed beneath soft candlelight. A chef in white served roasted duck with herbs and a bottle of wine that probably cost more than her rent for a year. Lila tried to eat, but her stomach churned. "Do you always eat alone in a room this big?" she asked quietly. Ethan's eyes lifted from his plate. "Usually, I find silence more honest than small talk." "That sounds lonely." "Lonely is a word people use when they need noise," he said, his tone sharp but not cruel. "I prefer clarity." The conversation ended there. Lila set down her fork and folded her hands in her lap. She had stepped into his world of wealth and power, but somehow it felt colder than the small apartment she had left behind. When dinner ended, Ethan stood. "Tomorrow, the press will announce our marriage. There will be questions. Keep your answers short and polite. Do not mention the contract." She nodded, her expression unreadable. "Understood?" As he left the dining hall, Lila exhaled slowly. The chandelier above her shimmered softly, its reflection dancing across the marble floor like pieces of light trying to escape. She whispered to herself, 1 year, Jamie, just 1 year, and I will get you that surgery." Upstairs, Ethan paused at his office window. Watching the rain return, he saw her faint silhouette in the courtyard below. standing by the fountain, her dress caught in the wind. Something about that quiet resilience unsettled him in a way he could not explain. For the first time that night, Ethan Ward, who believed emotions were weaknesses, felt the faint, unfamiliar ache of conscience. Morning light spilled through the tall windows of the east wing. Lila woke to the quiet hum of the mansion, a sound too soft to be comforting. On the vanity, a folder had been placed neatly beside her breakfast tray. A note rested on top in Ethan's precise handwriting. Schedule and expectations. Read carefully. Inside the folder were pages typed in neat legal language. She skimmed through the rules, with her pulse tightening. Clause 1. Public appearances required at 3 major events. Clause 2. No interference with business affairs. Clause 3. Discretion about personal history. Clause 4. Private rooms remain separate. At the bottom, his initials marked every page. It was not a marriage, it was a contract printed on ivory paper. Lila exhaled, closing the folder. So this is love in his world, she murmured. Later that morning, a woman in a navy suit knocked on her door. Good morning, Mrs. Ward. I am Amelia, your image consultant. Mr. Ward requested that I help you prepare for the upcoming charity gala. Lila blinked. Charity gala. Yes, tomorrow evening, it will be your first public appearance as his wife. Hours passed in a blur of fabric, fittings, and quiet instruction. In the mirror, Lila barely recognized herself. Her hair was swept up elegantly, her makeup subtle but precise. The deep blue gown shimmered under the lights. She looked like she belonged in this house, but her heart knew she did not. When Ethan saw her that evening, he paused for half a second before composing himself. You clean up well, he said, handing her a small velvet box. Inside lay a diamond bracelet. This is for the event. Wear it. It belonged to my mother. Lila looked up, surprised by the gesture. It is beautiful. Thank you, he nodded, his tone businesslike. Remember, we smile, we answer questions, and we leave together. Appearances matter more than truth. The next night, flashes from cameras painted the red carpet in white bursts of light. Reporters shouted their names as they entered the ballroom of the Grand Meridian Hotel. Ethan's hand rested lightly on her back, his posture confident and rehearsed. To the world, they looked like a perfect couple. Inside, chandeliers gleamed above a sea of glittering gowns and tuxedos. Lila followed Ethan's lead, greeting executives and investors whose names blurred together. Her voice trembled at first, but soon she found a rhythm, speaking politely, smiling when required. Then came the first whisper. A woman near the buffet, draped in diamonds, leaned toward her friend. Is she not the maid from his house? My cousin swears she saw her cleaning there last month. The words hit Lila like a stone. She felt her face warm, but she lifted her chin. When another guest made a cruel remark about marrying up, she smiled gently and said, You are right. Life has a strange way of connecting people who would never meet otherwise. Sometimes, that is its beauty. The room fell quiet for a breath, and then someone clapped softly. The moment passed, but Ethan's gaze lingered on her. There was pride there, quiet and unspoken. When the night ended, they stepped back into the cool air. He opened the car door for her without a word. Inside the limousine, silence settled between them, thick but not uncomfortable. Ethan finally said, You handled yourself well. Lila looked out the window, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. You did not expect me to, did you? No, he admitted. But maybe I should have. As the car drove away, she caught her reflection in the glass. For the first time since signing that contract, she did not see a maid pretending to be someone else. She saw a woman learning to stand in her own light. The following week, the mansion felt different. The air was lighter somehow, though neither Ethan nor Lila spoke about why. The gala had changed something subtle between them. She had faced judgment with grace, and he had seen a strength in her that could not be bought or controlled. Still, Ethan kept his distance. Their marriage remained a performance, a signed agreement under his roof. Every morning, he read the financial pages at the breakfast table while she sat across from him in silence, stirring her tea. It was an arrangement without warmth, yet the quiet between them no longer felt as cold. That evening, Ethan called for her in the library. The firelight flickered across shelves of leather-bound books. "We will be attending the Carter Foundation board dinner next Friday," he said. "You handled yourself well at the gala. This one will be harder." She raised a brow. "Harder how?" "The board is full of people who hate losing power. They will test you to see if you belong beside me. They always do." Lila gave a small nod. "Then let them try." Her confidence caught him off guard. For a moment, he saw not the maid he had chosen on a dare, but a woman who could stand her ground in any room. Days later, the dinner unfolded exactly as he predicted. The room gleamed with silver cutlery and ambition. Conversations swirled about markets, mergers, and charity funding, all masked with polite smiles. Halfway through the evening, an older board member named Mr. Quick Bennett leaned forward, his tone sharp. "Mrs. Ward, I hear you were working for Ethan before the wedding. Quite the fairy tale, is it not? From maid to millionaire's wife?" A few polite laughs followed. Ethan's jaw tightened. Before he could speak, Lila placed her napkin gently on the table and smiled. "You are right, Mr. Bennett. It does sound like a fairy tale. But I believe the best stories are the ones that remind us where we came from." The man blinked, unsure how to respond. A few guests chuckled softly, not at her, but at her poise. Even the chairman smiled faintly. The tension dissolved. When the dinner ended, Ethan escorted her to the car. The city lights shimmered in her eyes as she looked out the window. He broke the silence first. "You keep surprising me." Lila smiled faintly. "You thought I would embarrass you. I thought you would be nervous," he admitted. "Most people would be." She turned to him. "I was nervous. I just chose not to show it." He looked away, a trace of admiration softening his expression. "You remind me of someone I used to know. My mother. She never flinched in front of people who wanted her to feel small." Lila's voice softened. "Then maybe that is why you gave me her bracelet." For a second, Ethan said nothing. The memory of his mother's calm strength filled the space between them. "Maybe," he murmured. When they returned home, he walked her to the staircase. For the first time, he did not turn away immediately. "Good night, Lila," he said quietly. She smiled. "Good night, Ethan." He watched her climb the stairs, the sound of her footsteps fading down the marble hall. Something unspoken lingered in the air, a flicker of warmth in a house built of silence. For the first time since their reckless arrangement began, Ethan Ward wondered if a bet could ever become something real. The next few days passed quietly, but the air inside the mansion began to change. The silence that once felt suffocating now carried something different, an unspoken awareness between them. Lila continued her daily routines with calm precision, helping organize charity schedules and answering media inquiries that still flooded in after the gala. Ethan watched her from a distance, intrigued by how she moved through his world without ever trying to impress it. One night, as a storm rolled across the city, lightning flashed against the tall windows of the study. Ethan sat behind his desk, staring at the blue glow of his computer screen but reading nothing. A knock broke the silence. "Come in," he said. Lila stepped inside, holding a stack of foundation reports. Her voice was steady. "I thought you might want to review the donation requests before tomorrow's meeting." He gestured for her to sit. "You are the first person who ever walked into this room without permission," he said. She smiled faintly. "You hired me once to clean this room. Now I am your wife. I think that counts as permission." For a moment, he said nothing. Rain tapped gently against the glass. She placed the papers on his desk, and as she did, he noticed a small scar on her wrist, thin, faded, but visible under the light. "What happened there?" he asked quietly. She hesitated before answering. "When I was 16, the restaurant I worked in caught fire. I went back inside for one of the younger girls. The scar stayed, but so did she. I suppose that was worth it." Ethan leaned back, his expression unreadable. "You risked your life for someone else." She was scared. Lila said simply, "Sometimes people just need one person to come back for them." Something in his chest shifted. He looked away toward the rain-soaked skyline. "My father never came back," he said suddenly. "He left when I was 10. One day he said he was traveling for business. He never returned. I think that is when I stopped believing in promises." Lila's voice softened. "Maybe that is why you hide behind contracts." He looked at her then, really looked. The firelight flickered across her face, gentle but unwavering. "You are not what I expected," he said quietly. She tilted her head. "What did you expect? A maid who would take the money and keep her head down. Then maybe you chose the wrong woman for your bet," she said. He smiled for the first time that night. "Or maybe I chose exactly the right one." The clock chimed softly in the distance. Neither of them moved. The storm raged outside. But inside the study, the world seemed to still. For the first time since their strange marriage began, there was no line between contract and confession, no distance between them. Only two people who had built walls for years, realizing they might be standing on the same side of them now. When she stood to leave, Ethan reached out instinctively, his hand brushing her wrist. It was not a command or a gesture of ownership, just a quiet connection. "Lila," he said softly, "thank you." "For what?" "For walking into my life when no one else would dare." Her voice trembled slightly, though she held his gaze. "You are welcome, Ethan." When she left, he remained there for a long while, staring at the door she had closed behind her. The rain eased into silence, and for the first time in years, Ethan Ward realized that his house no longer felt empty. The warmth between them did not go unnoticed. Within a few weeks, the world outside their mansion began whispering. A tabloid headline appeared first, from Maid to Millionaire's muse. The truth behind the Wards' sudden marriage. At first, Ethan ignored it, but by the third article, the tone had changed. Words like bet and arrangement began circling online. At breakfast one morning, Lila laid the newspaper on the table, her voice calm but firm. "Someone is leaking information from inside your company." Ethan scanned the page, his jaw tightening. "This is Bennett's work. He has been angry since you outshined him at the board dinner. Can you stop it?" she asked quietly. He folded the paper, his expression unreadable. "I will handle it." But by the end of the day, things grew worse. A gossip site released an anonymous video clip, grainy footage from months earlier, taken at the lounge where his friends had made the original dare. The sound was muffled, but Ethan's voice was clear enough. "Fine. If you want a show, I will marry her. If Yuenda says..." The story exploded overnight. Headlines accused Lila of being part of a publicity stunt. Her name trended for all the wrong reasons. Cameras crowded outside the mansion gates. That evening, Ethan found her in the garden, sitting by the fountain under a pale moon. She looked up when she heard him. "So it was real," she said softly. "You really did it for a bet." He stepped closer. "Lila, listen." She shook her head, her voice trembling but steady. "I defended you. I believed you. And all this time, it was true. It was never about the bet anymore." He said quickly, "It started that way. Yes. But I swear to you, it is not what this is now." Her eyes glistened, reflecting the faint light. "Then tell me, Ethan, what is it now? Because to me, it feels like I was just the punchline to your pride." He reached out, but she stepped back. "Do not," she whispered. "Do not make it harder to walk away. Lila, please, I cannot do this," she said, her voice breaking. "Not when the whole world thinks I sold myself for your game." The bracelet he had given her slid from her wrist, landing softly on the stone edge of the fountain. "Keep your promises, Ethan. That was the only reason I came here." She turned and walked toward the mansion. By the time he followed, her room was empty. Only the faint scent of lavender remained. For the next few days, the house fell silent again, heavier than before. Ethan stopped attending meetings. Reporters still waited beyond the gates, but he ignored them all. Each night, he sat in his office, staring at the bracelet resting on his desk. "Mr. Collins entered once. Cautious, sir. The board suggests releasing a statement. Perhaps an apology." Ethan shook his head. "Not a statement. I will say it myself." The lawyer frowned. "At a press conference? Are you sure?" "Yes," Ethan said, his voice low but firm. "If I ever want her to believe me again, the world needs to hear the truth first." As the night deepened, he looked toward the empty east wing and whispered her name. For the first time in his life, Ethan Ward felt something stronger than pride. He felt loss, and the quiet knowledge that he had created it himself. 2 days later, the sun rose over New York, pale and cold, outside the Ward estate. Reporters gathered like a restless sea. Inside, Ethan stood before a mirror, adjusting his tie with trembling fingers. For the first time in years, his reflection looked like a stranger. The press conference was set at the Carter Foundation Auditorium, a place usually reserved for charity events and awards. Today, it would hold something else, a public confession. When Ethan arrived, flashes of cameras burst like lightning. He ignored the shouted questions, his jaw tight, his steps steady. On the stage, microphones waited beneath the bright lights. He took a breath and began. "Good morning. My name is Ethan Ward. Most of you know me as a businessman, a man who prides himself on control. But there is something, I need to say something that will not fit into a press release." The room fell silent. A continued, his voice even but heavy. "Months ago, I made a mistake. I agreed to a foolish bet. I allowed my ego to turn something sacred into entertainment. And because of that, an innocent woman was humiliated before the world. That woman is my wife, Lila Ward." Cameras clicked, but he did not look away. "She did not marry me for money. She did it to save her brother's life. I was too blind to see the courage that stood right in front of me. She has more honor in her heart than I have ever had in my entire life." A murmur rippled through the room, but he pressed on. "Today, I am dissolving every business deal tied to that night. The Carter Foundation will receive the funds from my company's personal reserve, $10 million to support working women and medical relief programs. This will not undo what I have done, but maybe it will mean something to someone like her." He paused, searching the crowd, as if she might somehow appear among the flashing lights. "Lila, if you can hear this, I am sorry. Not as a CEO, not as a man who lost control of a narrative, but as someone who finally learned what love is supposed to mean." When he stepped off the stage, there was no applause, only the sound of cameras and whispered astonishment. But for the first time in months, he felt lighter. That same afternoon, across the city, Lila watched the broadcast from the hospital waiting room. Jamie, her younger brother, was awake and smiling faintly, a sign of recovery after his surgery. She did not say anything for a long time. She simply stared at the screen, at the man who had once broken her heart, standing before the world and breaking his own pride. "He looks sorry," Jamie murmured. Lila nodded slowly. "He does." A nurse came by to check Jamie's vitals, leaving a folded newspaper on the chair. On the front page, the headline read, "Ethan Ward apologizes. Donates $10 million for women in need." Lila traced her fingers over the image, not with anger anymore, but with something softer, something she had not felt since that first day in the mansion. That evening, she returned to her small apartment. The city lights glowed against the window, and the world seemed quieter than usual. She opened the drawer where she had hidden the gold bracelet and held it in her hand. It caught the light, shimmering like forgiveness, waiting to be spoken. "Maybe people really can change," she whispered. Outside, rain began to fall again, gentle this time, like the world itself had chosen to start over. 1 month later, spring returned to the city. The frost on the windows melted into morning light, and the headlines that once shouted scandal were slowly replaced by quieter stories of redemption. The Carter Foundation's donation program had begun changing lives. Women across the city received grants for education, housing, and medical care. For many, Ethan Ward's name had shifted from arrogance to accountability. But for Ethan himself, none of that mattered as much as the silence in his home. Every room reminded him of her, the scent of lavender on the staircase, the echo of her footsteps fading down the hall. He had rebuilt his reputation, but his heart remained empty. One afternoon, he received a small envelope with no return address. Inside was a single note written in Lila's delicate handwriting. "Your apology reached further than you think. Jamie is recovering. Thank you." Beneath the words lay the gold bracelet, the same one he had given her months before. Ethan held it in his hand for a long time, then smiled faintly. "If she returned this," he whispered, "then she is ready to move on. The only question is, am I?" That evening, he made a call to the Carter Foundation office. "I want to open a new gallery space," he told the director. "Something that honors the people who taught me humility. Name it the Dare to Love exhibition." 2 weeks later, the exhibition opened quietly in a renovated art hall downtown. The event was simple, decorated with soft lights and framed photographs of ordinary people whose kindness had changed someone's life. At the center stood one painting, a portrait of a woman in a blue gown standing under rainlight, her eyes steady and kind. The plaque below read, "Lila Ward, the reason I learned to care." That night, as guests mingled, Ethan stood near the entrance, speaking to reporters in calm tones. Then he saw her. Lila walked in slowly, wearing a soft cream dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. For a moment, everything stopped: the noise, the crowd, the weight of regret. She met his eyes and smiled gently. "You built this for me. For you," he said quietly, "and for everyone who reminded me that love is more than pride." She looked around the room, at the photos of people whose lives had been touched by his donation. "It is beautiful." "Ethan," he stepped closer. "So, are you." They stood there for a moment that stretched like eternity. Finally, he took her hand. "No contracts. No conditions. I cannot erase how it started," he said, "but I can promise that what comes next will be real." Her eyes softened, and she nodded. "Then maybe we both learned something from that bet." He smiled. "That love is not a game. That, sometimes," she said, "it takes a little risk to find the truth." Outside, the city lights shimmered against the glass walls of the gallery. Music drifted through the open doors. And for the first time in a long while, Ethan Ward felt peace. As the night drew to a close, they stood together before the portrait. He whispered, "To the best mistake I ever made." She laughed softly. "2 second chances." And in that quiet moment, the bet that once began in pride ended in redemption, sealed not by a contract, but by a choice: two hearts finally choosing to stay.